Sweet Evil by Wendy Higgins. Performed by Erin Mallon. Prologue. Convent of Our Mother Mary, Los Angeles. Nearly 16 years ago. The newborn wailed as the midwife wrapped her in a receiving blanket and quickly handed her to Sister Ruth. Even stooped with age, the oldest nun at the convent exuded a regal air as she shushed the tiny bundle, attempting to shield her from the sight of her mother's last breaths. In the corner of the sterile room, a large man with a smooth-shaved head and goatee stood watching. Darkness fell over his face as the young midwife tried to resuscitate the woman on the bed. Sweat ran down the midwife's temples as she continued chest compressions. She shook her head and spoke in a panicked murmur. "Where's the doctor? He should be here by now." The midwife didn't see the soft shimmer of mist rise from the patient's chest, then linger in the air above her body, but the man in the corner did. His eyes widened as another vapor, even stronger than the first, arose from the woman's lifeless form. It took shape, a winged being of blinding purity. Sister Ruth gasped in wonder, then shifted the baby from her shoulder and cradled her upward to let her face show. The larger spirit swooped down and covered the infant girl in a kiss as soft as a breeze. It moved next to the man in the corner, who choked out a single sob, reaching for her. A tear escaped before he reined in his emotion. The spirit remained in front of him for one moment longer, before gathering the weaker spirit into her arms and floating away, as if on a wisp of wind. "I'm sorry, I don't know what happened." The midwife's voice and hands shook as she pulled the sheet up over the woman's small body. She crossed herself and closed her eyes. "You did all you could," Sister Ruth said with gentleness. "It was her time." The silent, fearsome man looked away from the bed and fixed his hard eyes on the baby. Sister Ruth hesitated before angling the child outward for him to see. The newborn let out a whimper, and her dark eyes opened wide. For the briefest moment, his features softened. Their shared gaze was severed as the door banged open and the midwife screamed. Police rushed in, filling the small space. Sister Ruth backed against the wall and held the baby close. "Dear God above," she whispered. The man in the corner appeared unfazed as cops surrounded him.
"Jonathan LeGray?"
asked the officer in front.
"Also known as John Gray?"
"That's me,"
he responded in a raspy, gruff voice, lifting his frown-lined face into a wicked smile of defiance and danger. He did not fight when they surged forward with handcuffs, reading him his rights.
"You're under arrest for trafficking illegal drugs across state and international borders."
As they pulled Jonathan LeGray from the room, citing a list of crimes, he turned again to look at the baby girl, giving her a tight, ironic grin.
"Just say no to drugs, will you, kid?"
With that, he was yanked from sight, and the baby's wail rose again. Pleasure is the bait of sin. Plato. Chapter 1. Lies and Lust. I tugged the jean skirt down and tried not to fidget with the straps of the tank top as we stood in line for the show. My shoulders and arms felt naked. The outfit had been picked out for me by Jay's older sister as an early 16th birthday present, and Jay got us tickets to see a few local bands play, including his latest band infatuation, Lascivious. Their name alone was a strike against them, but I wore a smile on my face for Jay's sake. He was my best friend, after all, my only friend. People at school assumed something was going on with Jay and me, but they were wrong. I didn't like him like that, and there was no question he didn't like me in that way either. I knew his feelings. I could literally see them and feel them if I allowed myself. Jay was in his element now, tapping his fingers against his hips. He radiated excitement that I could see around his body as a blinding yellow-orange hue. I let myself soak in his good mood. He ran a hand over his thick, short-cropped blonde hair, then pinched the square tuft of hair under his bottom lip. He was stout and short for a guy, but still a good bit taller than me. A loud song with a thumping beat rang from Jay's pocket. He gave me a goofy grin and began to bop his head back and forth to the rhythm. Oh no, not the crazy booty dance. Please don't, I begged. Jay broke into his funky ringtone dance, shoulders bouncing and hips moving from side to side. People around us stepped away, surprised, then began to laugh and cheer him on. I pressed my fingers against my lips to hide an embarrassed smile. Just as the ringtone was about to end, he gave a little bow, straightened up, and answered the call.
"Sup?"
he said.
"Dude, we're still in line. Where you at?"
It must have been Gregory.
"Did you bring our CDs?" "All right, sweet. See you in there."
He shoved the phone into his pocket. I rubbed my bare arms. It had been a gorgeous spring day in Atlanta, but the air temperature dropped when the sun disappeared behind the tall buildings. We lived an hour north in the small town of Cartersville. It was strange to be in the city, especially at night. Streetlights came to life above us, and the crowd grew louder with the arrival of dusk.
"Don't look now,"
Jay leaned over to whisper,
"but the dude at 3 o'clock is checking you out."
I immediately looked, and Jay grunted. How funny. The guy really was looking at me, albeit with bloodshot eyes. He gave me a nod, and I had to suppress a ridiculously girly giggle as I turned back around. I busied myself playing with a strand of my dirty blonde hair.
"You should talk to him,"
Jay said. "No way."
"Why not?"
"He's high," I whispered.
"You don't know that."
But I did. The colors of someone's emotions blurred when their bodies were under the influence. That guy's were fuzzy at best. Seeing emotions as colors was an extension of my ability to sense others' feelings, their auras. I'd had the gift since infancy. The color spectrum was complicated, as were emotions, with shades of a color meaning different things. To simplify, positive feelings were always colors ranging from bright to pastel. Negative feelings were shades of black, with a few exceptions. Envy was green, pride was purple, and lust was red. That was a popular one. The colors mesmerized me, the way they shifted and changed, sometimes slow and sometimes in rapid succession. I tried not to read people constantly or to stare. It seemed like an invasion of privacy. Nobody knew what I could do, not even Jay or my adoptive mother, Patty. The line for the club moved slowly. I adjusted my skirt again and looked down to evaluate the decency of its length. It's fine, Anna. At least my legs had a little muscle these days, instead of looking like a pair of toothpicks. Although I'd been pegged with nicknames like Twiggy and Sticks growing up, I didn't obsess about my figure, or lack of one. Padded bras were a helpful invention, and I was satisfied with the 2 small indentations in my sides that passed for a waist. Running had become my new pastime 5 weeks ago, after I'd read how my body is the temple of my soul. Healthy temple. Check. As we moved up a few more steps, Jay rubbed his palms together.
"You know,"
he said,
"I could probably get us drinks when we get inside."
"No drinks," I immediately answered, my heart quickening its pace.
"Fine, I know. No drinks, no drugs, no nothing."
He imitated me, fluttering his eyes, then nudged me with his elbow to show he was only kidding, as if he could be mean anyway. But he knew I had an abnormal aversion to substances. Even now, his comment about drugs and alcohol caused an uncomfortable, almost physical reaction within me. It felt like an urgent, greedy pushing and pulling. I took a deep breath to calm down. We finally made our way to the front of the line, where a young bouncer snapped an underage wristband on me and gave me an appraising look, eyes scanning my waist-length hair before raising the velvet rope. I rushed under it, with Jay on my heels.
For real, Anna. Don't let me stand in the way of all these dudes tonight.
Jay laughed behind me, raising his voice as we entered the already packed room, music thumping. I knew I should have put my hair up before we came, but Jay's sister Jana had insisted on my keeping it down. I pulled my hair over my shoulder and wound it into a rope with my finger, looking around at the tightly packed crowd and wincing slightly at the noise and blasts of emotion. They only think they like me because they don't know me, I said. Jay shook his head.
I hate when you say things like that.
Like what? That I'm especially special? I was trying to make a joke, using the term us Southerners fondly call people who weren't right, but anger burst gray from Jay's chest, surprising me, then fizzled away.
Don't talk about yourself that way. You're just
shy. I was weird, and we both knew it, but I didn't like to upset him, and it felt ridiculous having a serious conversation at the top of our lungs. Jay pulled his phone from his pocket and looked at the screen as it vibrated in his hand. He grinned and handed it to me. Patty. Hello? I stuck a finger in my other ear so I could hear. I'm just checking to see if you made it safely, honey. Wow, it's really loud there. Yeah, it is. I had to shout. Everything is fine. I'll be home by 11. It was my first time going to something like this, ever. Jay had begged Patty for permission himself, and by some miracle, got her to agree. But she was not happy about it. All day she'd been as nervous as a cat at the vet.
You stay right next to Jay, and if any strangers try to talk to you...
I know, Patty. Don't worry, okay? Nobody's trying to talk to me. It was hard to reassure her while I was shouting and being jostled. The DJ was announcing that Lascivious would hit the stage in 5. I gotta go, I told her. The band's about to come on. I'll be safe, I promise.
All right, honey. Maybe you can call me on your way home?
It was not a suggestion. Okay, love you, bye. I hung up before she started talking about self-defense moves or some other crazy thing. I'd barely made it out of our apartment earlier that night because of her list of warnings. Part of me thought she might be paranoid enough to follow us to the club. Come on. I grabbed Jay's hand and pulled him into the crowd. It was an eclectic mix. Everything from punks to goths to preps. I worked us all the way to the front corner of the stage, annoying a few people with my slight pushiness, but I was careful to apologize. I figured I owed Jay a front row seat after upsetting him. The wooden stage was battered, like every other surface in the building. The club was small and boxy, but the ceilings were high. Cramming people inside and breaking every fire code in Georgia added to the atmosphere. We squeezed in just as the DJ told everyone to give it up for Lascivious. The band was greeted by a roar of cheers, and I recognized the first song as one Jay played for us on our way to school sometimes. Despite my usual tendency to be ultra-reserved, I found myself caught up in the music, jumping up and down and singing along at the top of my lungs. Jay was right there with me, doing the same. I couldn't believe it. This was fun. I bounced with the crowd, allowing myself to be caught up in the surrounding exhilaration. Dude! Jay shouted in my direction as the first song ended. They are awesome! The second song started, and it was slower. I calmed down a little and looked at the band. The lead singer oozed with pride. His dark purple aura all but drowned out his tight shirt and snug jeans. His spiked hair was styled in a stiff lean to one side. He held the microphone like a lover. The tempo sped up into a frenzy of drum beats as they hit the chorus, bringing my eyes to the drums as the wild crowd began jumping again. I noticed several things about the drummer all at once. He was focused on the task at hand, keeping perfect rhythm. Instead of a swirl of transparent colors around his torso, there was a small, concentrated starburst of bright red at his sternum. But otherwise, his aura was blank. That was strange. But before I could contemplate it too much, my eyes landed on his face. Wowza. He was smoking hot, as in H-O-T-T, hot. I'd never understood until that moment why girls insisted on adding an extra T. This guy was extra T-worthy. I examined the drummer, determined to find a flaw. Brown hair, an interesting haircut, short around the sides and back, but longer on top, hanging loose and angling across his forehead. His eyes were narrow, and his eyebrows were a bit thick and... Oh, who was I kidding? I could pick him apart, but even the shifty slant of his eyes made him more alluring to me. There was an intensity in the way he played, like he was unleashing his passion into the music, and nothing else mattered. He was feeling it, lost in it, and he was good. A light sheen of sweat shone on his arms and face, dampening and darkening the hair at his temples. Never before had I felt such instant physical attraction. The power of it was jarring. I'd noticed when guys had nice features, sure, but I was usually distracted by their emotions. Now, with the drummer's absence of an aura, I was able to watch the muscles in his biceps and forearms flex as he slammed the drumsticks down in a whirlwind of precise movement. The beat was intoxicating, bumping each nerve ending inside of me. His whole body moved fluidly, jumping with the force of the beat, his face focused and sure. I looked again at the red starburst on his chest. It was unlike anything I'd ever seen. I doubted he felt lustful at that moment, with his utter concentration on the music. It was weird. The song came to an end with one last crash of the cymbals. Then he twirled the drumsticks in his fingers before tucking them under his arm. Jay was cheering, along with the rest of the crowd. I stood there in absolute awe.
"Are you having fun?"
Jay asked. "Yeah, definitely," I said, still watching the drummer as he swiped the straight brown locks from his eyes and looked down at two girls screaming out to him from the other end of the stage. He gave them the cutest, nonchalant half-smile I'd ever seen. My heart sputtered. The girls screamed and jumped up and down, mega cleavage threatening to bounce right out of their low-cut shirts. The drummer's red starburst widened a notch, and I felt an unpleasant snarling, ripping feeling in my gut. Another new sensation. I wanted him to look away from them. Jealousy? Good grief.
"It's not right, man," Jay said, following my stare. "Some guys have all the luck."
What? I finally broke my trance to look at Jay.
"That guy, the drummer, get this. He's a killer musician. He gets tons of chicks. His dad's loaded, and as if that wasn't enough, he's got a friggin' English accent."
I had to smile at Jay's mix of envy and admiration. "What's his name?" I hollered as the third song started.
Kaiden Rowe. Oh, and that's another thing. A cool name. Bastard.
"How do you spell it?" I asked. Jay spelled it for me.
"It's A-I, like Thai food,"
he explained. Kai, like Thai, only yummier. Gah, who was this girl invading my brain? The name Kaiden Rowe sounded familiar. I'd never seen him before, but I'd heard of him. "How old are they?" I asked, nodding toward the band.
"Juniors,"
Jay shouted close to my ear. Okay, I was impressed. They were only a year older than us, and they had major talent. According to Jay, these guys were the next big thing. They'd recorded a small-time record that was being shopped to labels in L.A., and they'd be touring regionally this summer. Jay was such a fanboy. An aggravated scuffle broke out behind us. I turned and saw Gregory's round face and a mop of curly brown hair above a too large Hawaiian shirt shoving through the crowd. He was Jay's musical partner in crime. They had written a few songs together and were pretty much addicted to music. The problem was that neither of them could sing. At all. "'Bout time, G." Jay and Gregory did that male grab hands and bang chests together thing in the cramped space. Then Gregory and I nodded at each other. I was surprised and a little grossed out to see a flutter of red across his aura as he looked down at my legs, but it passed quickly as he turned his attention back to Jay.
"Dude, you ain't gonna believe this,"
Gregory said in his thick Georgian drawl.
"I was just talking to Doug, one of the bouncers, and he can get us backstage."
My heart danced an involuntary jig all over my insides.
"No freaking way," said Jay. "Where's the CDs?"
Gregory held up 2 CDs of their compositions and lyrics. They were good songs, but I cringed at the thought of their being given to lascivious. The band probably got that kind of thing from fans all the time. I didn't like to think of Jay and Gregory's hard work tossed aside, as if they were some desperate posers, but the two of them were shrouded in such happy yellow auras that I could do nothing except be supportive. As the current song ended, I watched Kaiden shush the cymbals with his fingers, then tuck the drumsticks under his arm and swish his damp hair from his eyes again. When he leaned down to pick up a water bottle, our eyes met. My breath stuck right where it was in my lungs, and the loud voices around me turned to static white noise. The drummer's lustful starburst throbbed for one gorgeous moment, and then his forehead creased, and his gaze tightened. His eyes searched all around me before coming back to my face. He broke eye contact and took a swig of his water, tossing it back to the floor in time for the next song. The brief encounter left me unnerved. "I'm going to the bathroom," I told Jay, turning to go without waiting for a response. I noticed that the crowd moved much easier when one was moving away from the stage. The air in the girls' bathroom was stagnant with smells of urine and vomit. Only one of the 3 stalls was unclogged, but that didn't seem to stop girls from using them anyway. I decided I could hold it. I reapplied my lip gloss at the mirror and was about to leave when I overheard 2 girls who had crammed themselves into one of the tiny stalls.
"I want Kaiden Rowe."
"I know, right? You should throw him your number.
I want Michael, though. He can do to me what he does to that microphone."
They squeezed out of the stall, giggling, and I recognized their voluptuous chests as the ones that had been in front of the stage. Both of their auras were faded. I adjusted my hair clips. Jay's sister Jana had wrangled my massive thin strands into well-organized disarray, which I was successfully ruining. I had let her dab a little makeup on my face, but she'd freaked out when I asked her to cover up the pesky freckle at the end of my upper lip. "Are you crazy? Don't ever cover your beauty mark." Why did people call it that? A freckle was not beautiful. It was a small, dark attention grabber. I hated the way everyone's eyes went to it when they talked to me. I snapped the last clip in place and scooted over so the girls could wash their hands. They shared the faucet and complained about no soap, then moved on to primping. I looked at them, so comfortable together, and wondered what it would be like to have a female friend. I was about to leave when something in their conversation stopped me.
"The bartender said Kaiden's dad is one of the head honchos at PP in New York City."
My stomach lurched. PP stood for Pristine Publications, a popular worldwide corporation that included pornographic magazines, videos, and I could only imagine what else. "No way," her friend said.
"Yes way. Hey, we should try to get backstage."
She got excited and somehow lost her balance, stepping on my foot and grasping my shoulder. I reached out to steady her. "Oh, sorry," she said, leaning against me. When she seemed to have her balance, I let go of her. Out of nowhere, there was a murky tugging within me, an urge to open my mouth and say something that I knew was neither true nor nice. "I heard that guy Kaiden has gonorrhea." And there it was, out of my mouth. My heart pounded. I knew most people lied on some level, sometimes on a daily basis, but for whatever reason, I'd never been prone to tiny fibs. I didn't tell people I was fine if I wasn't. Nobody had ever asked me whether something made their butt look big, so I suppose I'd never been truly tested. All I knew was, until that moment, I had never purposely deceived anyone. The look of shock on their faces mirrored the shock I felt at myself. "Ew, are you serious?" asked the girl who had called dibs on him. I couldn't respond. "Okay, that's nasty," said the other girl. There was an awkward pause. I didn't really know what gonorrhea was, except that it was an STD. What in the world was wrong with me? I flinched when Kaiden's girl reached out and touched my hair. "Hey, oh my God, you have the softest hair. It looks like honey." Her emotional colors were so muddled from alcohol that I couldn't get a good reading, but it felt like she was sincere. Guilt soured my stomach. "Thanks," I said, feeling terrible. I couldn't leave that ugly lie sitting out there like that. I didn't really hear that about Kaiden." They both looked at me with confusion, and I swallowed, forcing myself to continue. "He doesn't have gonorrhea. I mean, not that I know of." "Why would you make that up?" The friend was more sober, and she was looking at me with deserved contempt. The drunken girl still looked confused. I contemplated playing it off like I'd been joking, but that would also be a lie, and who jokes about STDs anyway? "I don't know," I whispered. I'm sorry." I backed up and slipped out of there as fast as I could. It was a good thing, too, because Lascivious's last song was ending, and all the girls were wobbling toward the bathroom now. It was time for the bands to switch. I wrung my hands and bit my lower lip, looking for Jay as the crowd surged around me. I wanted to go home. "Anna!" Jay waved to me, and I had to chase him through the crowd toward a door where a gigantic man stood frowning, arms crossed over his chest in the classic bouncer pose. I just lied. It was all I could think about. Terrible feelings slithered around in the pit of my belly. Gregory held out a laminated card, which the bouncer glanced at before opening the door. I grabbed Jay's arm. "Wait, Jay, maybe I should just stay out here." He turned to me. "No way. Patty'll kill me if I leave you. It's all good. Come on." He pulled me through the door. We made our way around crew members who were hurriedly hauling around stage equipment. Music and raucous voices spilled from a room at the end of the hall. "Are we really doing this?" I asked, and was my voice really all high-pitched and shaky? I needed to scream. "Chill, Anna. It's fine. Be cool," Jay said. A wall of cigarette smoke and alcohol fumes hit us as we entered the warm room. I put my hands on my hips and tried to be inconspicuous as I checked for sweat marks on my tank top. When I saw small dampened spots had formed, I snapped my arms back to my sides. "Be cool," Jay had said. Like that could ever happen. It took only a few seconds of scanning the room to find him, standing in a back corner with 3 long-legged beauties who were obviously aware of the latest fashions. A ribbon of red aura wove around and between them. One of the girls pulled a cigarette from a pack. Like a magician, Kaiden whipped out a matchbook and flicked it open to light a match with one thumb. How did he do that? Jay gave my hand a tug, but I pulled away. "No, you guys go ahead. I'll wait here." I wanted to stay near the door. My stomach wasn't right.
You sure?
Yeah, I'm fine. I'll be right here. Good luck, or break a leg, or something. As Jay and Gregory turned and headed into the crowd, my traitorous eyes returned to the corner and found another pair of eyes staring darkly back. I dropped my gaze for 3 full seconds and then lifted my eyes again, hesitant. The drummer was still staring at me, oblivious to the 3 girls trying to win back his attention. He put up one finger at the girls and said something that looked like, "Excuse me." Oh my goodness, was he? Oh no, yes, he was walking this way. My nerves shot into high alert. I looked around, but nobody else was near. When I looked back up, there he was, standing right in front of me. Good gracious, he was sexy. A word that had not existed in my personal vocabulary until that moment. This guy was sexy like it was his job or something. He looked straight into my eyes, which threw me off guard, because nobody ever looked me in the eye like that. Maybe Patty and Jay, but they didn't hold my stare like he was doing now. He didn't look away, and I found that I couldn't take my gaze off those blue eyes.
Who are you?
He asked in a blunt, almost confrontational way. I blinked. It was the strangest greeting I'd ever received. I'm Anna?
Right, Anna. How very nice.
I tried to focus on his words and not his luxuriously accented voice, which made everything sound lovely. He leaned in closer.
But who are you?
What did that mean? Did I need to have some sort of title or social standing to enter his presence? I just came with my friend Jay. Oh, I hated when I got nervous and started talking in questions. I pointed in the general direction of the guys, but he didn't take his eyes off me. I began rambling. They just wrote some songs, Jay and Gregory, that they wanted you to hear. Your band, I mean. They're really good. His eyes roamed all around my body, stopping to evaluate my sad, meager chest. I crossed my arms. When his gaze landed on that stupid freckle above my lip, I was hit by the scent of oranges and limes and something earthy, like the forest floor. It was pleasant in a masculine way.
Uh-huh.
He was closer to my face now, growling in that deep voice, but looking into my eyes again.
Very cute. And where is your angel?
My what? Was that some kind of British slang for boyfriend? I didn't know how to answer without continuing to sound pitiful. He lifted his dark eyebrows, waiting. If you mean Jay, he's over there talking to some man in a suit, but he's not my boyfriend or my angel or whatever. My face flushed with heat, and I tightened my arms over my chest. I'd never met anyone with an accent like his, and I was ashamed of the effect it had on me. He was obviously rude, and yet I wanted him to keep talking to me. It didn't make any sense. His stance softened, and he took a step back, seeming confused, although I still couldn't read his emotions. Why didn't he show any colors? He didn't seem drunk or high, and that red thing, what was that? It was hard not to stare at it. He finally looked over at Jay, who was deep in conversation with the manager-type man.
Not your boyfriend, eh?
He was smirking at me now. I looked away, refusing to answer.
Are you certain he doesn't fancy you?
Kaiden asked. I looked at him again. His smirk was now a naughty smile. Yes, I assured him with confidence. I am.
How do you know?
I couldn't very well tell him that the only time Jay's color had shown mild attraction to me was when I accidentally flashed him one day as I was taking off my sweatshirt and my undershirt got pulled up too high. And even then, it lasted only a few seconds before our embarrassment set in. I just know, okay? He put his hands up in mock surrender and let out an easy laugh.
I'm terribly sorry, Anna.
I've forgotten my manners. I thought you were someone else."
He stuck out his hand.
"I'm Kaiden Rowe."
I peeled one arm away from my tight self-embrace to take his hand. Every inch of my skin broke out in goosebumps, and my face suddenly burned hot. I was glad for the dimmed lighting. I wasn't one of those people who blushed pink in the cheeks. I blushed crimson in the whole face, and my neck became splotchy. Not cute. The rush of blood always made me dizzy. I should have pulled my hand away then, but he continued to hold it, and his large palm and long fingers felt so nice. He chuckled deeply and let his hand slide away from mine until we were no longer touching. He noticed as my arms crossed over my chest again, and then he lifted his chin and sniffed the air.
"Ah, smells good. There's nothing like American hot dogs. I think I'll have one later."
Okay, random. I sniffed. "I don't smell anything," I said.
"Really? Lean toward the door some. Breathe a bit. Deeper."
I did as he said. Nothing. Determined, I did something that was rare for me. I reached my sense of smell out farther. There was no scent of hot dogs in the entire club, only stale alcohol and hot bleach water for the mops. I pushed it out farther. Nothing at the restaurant next door. Farther. My nose burned and I was getting lightheaded. Farther. And there it was. I smelled the nearest hot dog at a small street vendor nearly a mile away. My olfactory sense snapped quickly back, and I found him watching me with expectancy. What was he playing at? He couldn't have smelled that. Why would he pretend? I shook my head and tried to keep my face neutral. He smiled.
"I suppose I was mistaken then."
Gosh, his eyes were gorgeous. The color of tropical honeymoon waters ringed in dark sapphire and enclosed by thick lashes. What? Honeymoon waters? Get a grip. A wispy, perfumed girl walked up and stood between Kaiden and me, placing her back firmly in my face. I had to step backward. "We're getting lonely over there." Her hands moved over his chest and up to rest on his shoulders. Red jumped out from her when she touched him, and he brought his hand up to squeeze her bony hip. I turned away, not listening to his whispered response, which appeared to appease her. She gave me an icy glance before walking back to the corner.
"Maybe I'll see you around, Anna. I'll be certain to give your boyfriend Jay's songs a listen."
And with that, he was gone. "He's not my—" I sputtered at his retreating back. I'd been looking in the wrong place earlier when I searched for a flaw in Kaiden. It was not in his face. It was in his personality. Confidence was good, but overconfidence was not. I looked around, feeling stupid and alone. Thankfully, I had to stand solitary for only one long moment before Jay came back, feeling over-the-moon happy. I let his emotion drench me.
"What were you and Kaiden Rowe talking about?"
Jay asked me.
"Man, y'all looked like you were going to rip each other's clothes off."
I gasped and smacked his arm, but he didn't flinch. "We did not." My eyes darted over to Kaiden for a fraction of a second, and though he was too far away to have heard, the wink he sent me brought another flush to my skin.
"So?"
Jay said.
"You gonna tell me or not? What was he saying to you?"
What in the world could I tell Jay that wouldn't leave him as thoroughly confused as I felt? I glanced over at Kaiden again and caught him watching me for one last second before turning his back to us. "Nothing, really," I hedged. "It was weird. I'll tell you about it later. I need to call Patty and tell her we're on our way. Then I want to hear about you. Who was that man you were talking to? What did he say? I guess Gregory is staying?" The distraction tactic easily got me off the hook as we left the club. Jay always drove. After I called Patty, he gave me a breakdown of the entire conversation with Lascivious's business manager. We dissected every word for all hopeful meaning, coming to the conclusion that the band's manager was extremely impressed with the talent and ambition of Jay and Gregory, and that they would definitely obtain rock star status by the end of the year. It was usually fun to dream big with Jay, but though I played along, tonight my mind was elsewhere. Using my extended senses to find that stupid hot dog smell had put my thoughts in a jumble. A mile from my apartment, I allowed my eyes to search and then linger on a dark abandoned house as we passed it. I stared at the boarded-up windows singed black and the roof half-caved by devouring flames from long ago. If I let myself remember, I could probably still smell it and taste it like a mouthful of ash. I was awoken at 2 a.m. a week before my 9th birthday with a powerful smell of smoke burning my nose. Our home was on fire. I got down just as I'd been taught and crawled through the darkness to Patty's room, feeling like I might hyperventilate. "Wake up," I said. "There's smoke." Patty jumped from her bed in a panic, running into the hall, and then she just stood there as I coughed and choked. She rushed through each room and even went outside to peek at the nearby complexes. "There's no fire in the apartments, honey. Must have been a bad dream. Climb in bed with me tonight, and I'll take care of you." It had been a bad dream, but not in the way she meant. For the family a mile away whose burning home I could smell as if it were our own, it had been a real-life nightmare. It had been a long, painful night for me as well, the night my 5 senses began to enhance. "Dreaming of Kyden Row, huh?" I looked up. We were parked in front of my building. "No," I muttered. "I was not thinking about him." Jay laughed, and I backhanded his big arm once again. I sighed, imagining how he would react if I told him that I had the nose of an Uberhound and eyes like binoculars. He was totally cool with my being eccentric, but he didn't know the extent of it. "Thanks for taking me tonight," I said. "I had fun." "For real? I knew you'd like it. So I'll pick you up for school on Monday?" "Yeah, see you then." I climbed out and headed up the steps, feeling resentful toward that Kyden kid for making me open my memory to things that were better off boarded up. Chapter 2. Good Girl Syndrome. Patty was frying eggs in our small apartment when I came in from my jog on Monday morning. I leaned over the counter to watch. She used her wrist to push a strawberry blonde curl from her face. When the strand fell again, I reached over and wrapped it behind her ear. A translucent pale yellow emotion swirled around her chest, wafting warmly toward me. She flipped the egg, tisking when the yolk broke. Watching her at the stove, I wished she were my real mother, so I could have inherited some of her genetics. I'd love to share her thick curls and soft voluptuousness. Of course, she'd waited up for me to get home Saturday night, then hounded me for details, pretending to be excited for me when I could see she was overflowing with anxiety. I gave her the G-rated version, leaving out the bits about lying to people and having strange encounters with a boy. She'd bitten her lip as I spoke and searched my face, but then accepted my story and relaxed. Patty handed me a plate and shooed me off with a wave of the spatula. I sat at our round dining table, pushing aside a pile of unpaid bills and photo proofs from her freelance photography jobs. "What are you up to today?" I asked her. "The Dispatch hired me to shoot a press conference with the governor this morning. I should be home around 4. Noticing the time, I scarfed down my breakfast and hurried to get ready. 15 minutes later, I kissed Patty, preparing to dash out the door, but she cut my cheek with a gentle hand to still me. "I love you, sweet girl." Light pink love fluttered around her body. "Love you too," I said. She patted my cheek, and I left. Jay always picked me up for school at exactly 7:10. He was prompt. I liked that. "Sup?" he said when I climbed in the car. His eyes were still puffy from his having just rolled out of bed. "Morning, sunshine," I said. It took 2 hard pulls on the creaky car door before it finally slammed shut. I twisted my wet hair and hung it over my shoulder. It would dry straight, and I'd pull it back. We usually drove to school in silence because Jay wasn't a morning person, but we hadn't had a chance to talk since he brought me home Saturday night.
I always wondered what your type was, but I never imagined it would be a hardcore rocker.
Here we go. I had been hoping he'd be too sleepy for this conversation. He's not my type. If I had a type, it would be nice, not some hot-headed, egocentric male slut.
Did you just call him a male slut?
Jay laughed.
Dang, that's like the worst language I've ever heard you use.
I glowered at him, feeling ashamed, and he laughed even harder.
Oh, hey, I've got a joke for you. What do you call someone who hangs out with musicians?
He raised his eyebrows, and I shrugged. I don't know. What?
A drummer.
I shook my head while he cracked up at his joke for another minute before hounding me again about Kaden.
All right, so you talked about my CDs. You had some cultural confusion with some of his lingo. Then you talked about hot dogs? That can't be everything. You looked seriously intense.
That's because he was intense, even though we weren't really talking about anything. He made me nervous.
You thought he was hot, didn't you?
I stared out of my window at the passing trees and houses. We were almost to school.
I knew it.
He smacked the steering wheel, loving every second of my discomfort.
This is so weird. Anna Witt has a crush.
Fine, yes, he was hot, but it doesn't matter because there's something about him I don't like. I can't explain it. He's scary.
He's not the boy next door, if that's what you mean. Just don't get the good girl syndrome.
What's that?
You know, when a good girl falls for a bad boy and hopes the boy will fall in love and magically want to change his ways. But the only one who ends up changing is the girl. Like Jamie Moore, remember?
Jamie Moore. That's where I'd heard Kaden's name before. She was a junior at our school. We parked in our usual spot at Cass High School.
See you at lunch,
Jay said. He had his eye on a girl named Kayla, who was climbing out of her car 3 spots down. Yeah, see you then. I walked to school while he lagged behind to say hi to her. Jamie Moore was on my mind all day. I sat with Jay at lunch, but my eyes kept going to Jamie, sitting with her same group of friends, but sort of an outcast now. She sat on the end, keeping to herself as the others played and flirted. Being unsociable and fashion backward had never been issues for Jamie Moore. She was a year older than me, beautiful, and a genuinely nice person. Her primary color used to be the sunshine yellow of happiness. At the beginning of the school year, she'd been a cheerleader and president of the drama club. In the fall, I heard she was dating some guy in a band from a high school in Atlanta. Kaden Rowe. Her colors began to change then. Yellow to red to gray to black. She was full of anger, then self-loathing, and most recently, depression. Gossip flew about pictures of Jamie taken on her boyfriend's cell phone and their eventual breakup. She was soon kicked off the cheerleading squad for failing grades. Next came stories of her partying, moving from one guy to another, but never being happy. For the first time, she wasn't given the starring role in the winter play. My heart contracted tightly as I looked at her again, sitting there at the end of the long lunch table. She still dressed trendy and took time to style her hair, which was probably why she was welcome to continue sitting with the others. But her smile and her sunshine yellow were gone, replaced by a dull gray haze. The bell rang, and I watched her shuffle out of the cafeteria. No, I did not want to see Kaden again. Of that I was now certain. I made my way through the crowded halls, barely cringing anymore at the onslaught of emotion from the people surrounding me. It had been difficult adjusting to a big school, after spending the first 8 years in a small private school, but I was used to it now. It was almost the end of the school year, 2 more weeks to go. The Georgia heat had set in, bringing with it tank tops and flip-flops, as well as shorts and skirts that kept no secrets. I shied away from showing too much skin, partly because of my own modesty, and partly because I felt kind of bad for boys. Unlike other girls, I had to see firsthand that most boys were having a hard enough time concentrating on anything besides their overpowering hormones. Jay mussed my hair as I passed him in the hall, never pausing in his conversation with one of the guys from band class. I smiled, smoothing my hair back down. I slipped into my Spanish class and immediately started the classwork written on the board. Once finished, I peeked over at Scott McAllister, who sat next to me. He was dozing off on top of unfinished verb conjugations. Scott was an all-state wrestler, a cutie with big brown eyes and a baby face. He'd always been courteous to me, even flirtatious at times, but I didn't take it to heart, seeing how he flirted with lots of girls. The class finished early, and we were told to work on our final project. Senora Martinez? I raised my hand and she nodded. Are you gonna collect the homework? A collective groan rose up from the students, and the guy next to Scott muttered, "Shut up, stupid." I slunk down low in my seat, mortified by my own social faux pas. "Ah, sí," Senora Martinez said. "Gracias, Ana."
"Why you gotta be so good all the time?"
Scott whispered. I lifted my eyes and caught his teasing expression. He had no assignment to pass up when the teacher came around. My face was still warm by the time she finished collecting the worksheets. Veronica, who sat in front of me, turned and gave me a sympathetic look. She was one of the only other students who did the homework. Nobody worked on their projects after that. Well, I did, of course, compulsive rule follower that I was. The class erupted into the excited chatter of free time, and Senora Martinez turned to her computer, ignoring us. Even the teachers were ready to be done with this year. I opened my notebook. Veronica bent to put her stuff in her bag and caught sight of my sandals. "Cute shoes," she said to me. "Where'd you get them?" Oh, how I wished I felt okay about lying. I kept my eyes on my notebook when I answered, "Thanks. I think they were from a yard sale or flea market or something." "Oh." Veronica glanced at them again, with less appreciation this time, and we shared a polite smile. She had short, dark hair and a Grecian nose with a slight arch to it. When she caught me looking at her nose, I was stunned by the wave of dark self-loathing that came off her before she turned back around to face her friends. Of course, the feature she hated most about herself was the one I thought made her naturally seductive, in a way I could never dream of being. Scott turned in his desk toward me.
"So, what are you doing next Friday, Shorty?"
"Nada," I answered.
"Huh?"
His look of confusion made me smile. "Nada," I said again. You know, it means nothing in Spanish.
"Oh, yeah. See, you must be under the impression I pay attention in here or something. Anyway, you want to come to a party? Jean's folks have a lake house."
My stomach jumped. Wow, that's cool. I don't know, though. I leaned my elbow on the desk and pretended to study the graffiti etched into the wood.
"Jay's invited, too. Come on, we've never partied together."
I probably would have felt very uncomfortable if it had been anyone other than Scott giving me that dreamy look. I glanced at his emotions. Happy, hopeful, slightly lustful. I couldn't help but be flattered by his invitation and apparent interest. "I guess I can talk to Jay about it," I said, leaving out the fact that it was Patty I'd have to convince. "But you know that I don't really party, as in party. I couldn't even make eye contact after saying such a lame thing, but I didn't want him having any false expectations.
"Yeah, I know,"
he said. Why is that? How could I explain it? I didn't have any nagging judgment toward my peers for drinking and partying. I knew it was innocent rebellion and self-exploration, but there was always a promise of dangerous excitement I strongly desired. Ironically, it was that desire that repelled me.
Are you scared?
He asked. Kind of, I admitted. I don't like the fact that it might make me do something I wouldn't normally do.
That's the fun of it. It makes you open and free.
Open and free. I wondered if that was how Danny Lawrence had felt when he passed out on the lawn of a party last year, and the other drunk guys thought it would be funny to stand around peeing on him. Or the most terrible thing that happened over Christmas break, which nobody talked about at Cass. The senior girl who was high and drove off the road, killing her best friend in the passenger seat. Had she been feeling bold? Every time I saw her walking the halls in a black cloud of remorse, I wanted to cry for her. I guess I'm just boring, I mumbled. I was ready to close down this conversation. I looked up at the clock, thankful to see the bell was about to ring.
Trust me, Anna.
Scott leaned in.
One drink in you, or one hit of X, and you'll feel anything but boring.
Everything inside of me tightened. X. Ecstasy. The word bounced around in my head like a rubber ball, out of control and impossible to catch. My dark undercurrent stirred with craving, and my breathing quickened. I didn't like to acknowledge that darkness. It rose at any mention of drugs and alcohol. And to be honest, it was what had drawn me to Jay last year. I saw something similar in him, though not exactly the same. A dark strand ran under the surface of his emotions. It was always there, threatening, especially at the mention of alcohol. I didn't know what it meant, but I wanted us in it together. I thought I might be able to help him or protect him. A funny thought, considering he was a brawny guy. I looked at Scott, who grinned at me. Not a sinister grin, but an I want to experience something with you grin. Veronica must have caught wind of our hushed conversation, because she turned and gave a conspiratorial smile to the two of us.
Are you going to the party, Anna?
She asked. I don't know. Maybe.
You should come. It's going to be crazy. Everyone will be there.
I looked down and traced the wooden grooves in the desk with my pencil's eraser. Could I get away with changing the subject? So, I'm turning 16 on Wednesday. I'm getting my license.
I am so jealous,
Veronica said, smacking my desk.
I've been 16 for 3 months already, and my dad still hasn't let me get mine. I'm pretty sure he hates me. Are you getting a car?
No. Not even close. Everyone jumped up and grabbed their things as the bell rang, and the tension that held a vice-like grip on my neck finally relaxed its vicious fingers and released me. Chapter 3. Sweet 16 Surprise. I didn't feel any older when I woke up on Wednesday morning. Patty was out on our small balcony with her coffee and newspaper. She snapped to attention, and her face brightened when she saw me. Something misty hovered beside her like a ghost. I pressed my fingers to my eyes, but when I took them away, it was still there. It was about the same size as her, maybe longer, like a fuzzy white shadow. Had I developed another sight? Please, no. I'd learned to fear the acquisition of new abilities, like the choking horror of smoke from a mile away. Each came with some fresh disadvantage. "Happy birthday," Patty said, standing and pulling me into a big hug, then cupping my face and gazing into my eyes. "You feeling okay?" My eye glided to the cloud thing, which moved around her, never changing its general appearance. "What's wrong?" She looked down at her shoulder where my eyes were and wiped down the length of her arm, right next to the cloud. "Please don't tell me I have dandruff." She ran a hand through her waves, pulling her hair to the side to get a look at it. "No, you don't. Nothing's wrong. Sorry. I'm still tired, just zoning out." She squeezed me again, kissing my head. "I can't believe my little girl is 16. There's a card from Nana on the counter. Let me go make your hot chocolate." The shadow thing floated along next to her, following her into the apartment, as if attached. I sat down in a plastic chair, feeling jittery, while Patty made my cocoa. Most mornings were relaxing, sipping warm drinks on the balcony, but not today. The combination of the humid morning air and the weird vision made me feel claustrophobic. I couldn't believe I was seeing something else. Nothing strange had happened to me for more than 2 years. I thought it was over.